Hello Tech World, this is TechThoughts, and welcome to this special TechThoughts video series focused on learning PowerShell. This is an operationally designed series that aims to get you ramped up in using PowerShell quickly. This is episode 10 in the series, PowerShell Scripts. As always, if you prefer written documentation, the corresponding article for this topic can be found on the TechThoughts.info blog, which I've linked in the description below. Let's go ahead and get started. So congrats on making it through episodes 1 through 9. And at this point in the series, we're done with the PowerShell fundamental theory and syntax of the language. And moving forward, we're going to be building solutions using PowerShell. We're going to kick that off with this episode, where I'll be live coding a script so you can see the thought process and the workflow that I use to kind of create something like this from scratch. At the end of the video, I'll be covering how to actually run and execute scripts on your system. Let's go ahead and get started with the code. Okay, so I've got Visual Studio Code open here, and I'm gonna start a new script by clicking Control-N, which is gonna open up a new tab. If you've followed along in my getting set up for PowerShell development video, then you've gone ahead and maybe configured this to automatically default to PowerShell. You can see down here in the bottom right-hand corner, I've got PowerShell as the selected language already, and we're coding against PowerShell 7. Okay, so this blank screen with that blinking cursor can be a little bit intimidating. So before you start writing a script, you really need to understand what it is you're trying to achieve. Maybe there's a manual task at work that you're trying to automate, or maybe you want to add some new functionality. And so what I like to do is start off with a mission statement. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a less than symbol and a pound sign. And notice that immediately generates a pound sign and a greater than symbol. And anything that I stick inside of this code, these two little symbols now, is going to be a PowerShell comment. So we can put a lot of different text in here, and it's just going to be comments. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that, and I'm going to add in a mission statement of what I'm trying to achieve with this particular script. Okay, so there's quite a few things at home that maybe you would like to see me live code, but I think you'll find this particular script useful in most situations. So in your home lab or at a computer that you have at your house, we're going to be creating a script that will notify you when a drive in your home network is running low on space. So the script will check the desired drive that you specify and send a telegram notification if it's below 20%. Now, all the actions should be logged. The script should support scanning a drive that you specify, and the script should support both Linux and Windows. Now, if this is the first script that you've ever written, seeing a mission statement like this may seem extremely daunting, and you may have no idea where to start. Well, this is the video for you. We're going to be walking through this and seeing how to tackle something like this. So now that we've got that kind of mission narrative, what I want to do is kind of break that into some actual bullet point statements of like what the script actually needs to do to achieve that. So it needs to support logging. So we're going to have to write some code in order to do that. We're going to have to check the desired drive for free space and maybe do some math calculation to see the percentage free. We're going to have to let the user specify the drive. We got to support both Windows and Linux, and it needs to send Telegram notifications. So starting off with something like this, I want to caution you, don't overcode. So look at some of these bullet statements and see if there's anything that can be abstracted. It's very easy to do some PowerShell logging. We're going to have to write some logic to check that drive. It's easy to let the user know how to specify which drive it is. We're going to have to write some logic to figure out if we're dealing with Windows or Linux. But sending a Telegram notification, which is a chat client, that seems pretty difficult. And I want to make this an easy script. I don't want to write a lot of logic to send Telegram notifications. I'm not even sure how to do that. When you're tackling a project like this, it can often be beneficial to hop over to the PowerShell gallery and see if there's something already on the gallery that maybe solves the problem for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm coming over to a terminal window, and I'm going to type in find module. And I'm going to give it the parameter of tag. So I'll do -t, tab, and tag. And I'm going to type in Telegram. If you're not familiar with Telegram, it's just a chat client, kind of like WhatsApp or any other messenger client that you've ever used. So we're going to click enter, and it's going to go out to the gallery and see if it finds anything that can potentially solve this problem for us. So I'm seeing a module here. I'm not sure if it does what I want it to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the up arrow, get that command back, and I'm going to load that into a variable called A. And so now the results of that search on the PowerShell gallery are loaded there, and I'm going to do .description. So I can actually read the whole description of what this module does. So PoshGram provides functionality to send various message types to a specified Telegram chat via the Telegram bot API. Great. That sounds like something that would solve my problem. So I'm going to go ahead and install the module PoshGram. It's going to ask me if I trust the gallery. I'm going to say yes. And now what I can do is I can do git command, parameter name module PoshGram, and see what commands are available from this module. So I'm looking at these different commands available to this particular module, and really I just want to send a text message. And so here I see a send Telegram text message. So I'm going to copy that and do a git help against it. And the synopsis is that we'll send a Telegram text message, which is something that I want to be able to do. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do a examples parameter on this. And in the first example, it looks like I need a bot token, a chat, and I just need to send it a message. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that and load that right into my script. Speaking of scripts, we're going to go ahead and save this, and I'm going to click Control S in order to do that. I'm going to go ahead and save it to the desktop. I'm going to call this Drive. And I'm going to click Save. And notice that if we come over here to the desktop on our machine, this is now a PowerShell script designated as the .ps1 that you see here. Okay, so this command seems relatively straightforward, and we're going to say something like your drive is low. We'll clean that up in a little bit, but basically what we just did is abstracted a lot of complexity by engaging a module off the PowerShell gallery. So these three lines, armed with a bot token, a chat number, we're going to be able to run this single line to send a message to Telegram to let us know when our drive is low. Now all we got to do is tackle the remaining logic in these bulleted statements up at the top. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and enter a comment that says log directory, because I'm going to need a directory to write the log to. So we're going to have to specify where that directory is going to be located. And because I'm going to be logging to that file in that directory, I'm also going to need to verify if log directory exists. And if it doesn't, we're going to need to create it on our device. Because we just took a dependency on the module PoshGram, we're going to need to verify that PoshGram is installed. And we're not going to be able to run properly if it is not. Once we do all that precursor information, we're going to need to get the hard drive information. And then finally, we're going to send the Telegram message if the drive is low. And that's where this logic right here comes in, which we copied off of that help. Okay, so where should our log be written to? Well, I'm going to declare a variable called log path. And here's our first rub on Windows versus Linux. On Linux, typically you would write a log maybe to someplace like /temp. But on Windows, we would typically write that to something like a temporary directory, or maybe something like clogs. So already off the bat, we're going to have to make a programmatic decision about where we're going to store the logs for this particular script. So we're going to need an if statement. Okay, so now I'm going to click Control tilde. That's going to bring up my console down here. And notice, and we've learned this in previous lessons, that PS version table is going to give us some information about the PowerShell in the system environment that we're running in. And we can see here that this is running on the platform of Win32. This is a Windows system. But if we pop over to Ubuntu real quick, and we type in PS version table here, this is running on a platform of Unix. So I'm going to use the PS version table to determine if we're running on a Windows machine or a Linux machine. So let's do an if, click tab. That's going to give us our condition. And in there, I'm going to type in PS version. And I'm going to go ahead and click tab on that. It's going to complete that variable for me. And I'm going to do dot platform. So if the PS version table dot platform is equal to Unix, and again, I got that from this right here. So if the platform is equal to Unix, then we're dealing with a Linux box. And if that's the case, my log path is going to be going to ctemp. I'm sorry, not ctemp, /temp. Otherwise, my else statement is going to be like, if we're not on a Linux machine, then we're going to be on a Windows device and we're going to use the C drive logs. Okay, now that I've got my logging directory, I'm going to have to name my log file. So I'm going to declare a new variable called log file. Okay, so log path, and then I'm going to call the log file drivecheck.log. And this is going to be our log file. You can't put inline comments in PowerShell, so you can tell someone that comes behind you what this is being used for. Okay, so let's review what I've got so far. I need to figure out where I'm going to be logging to, our log directory. I'm determining Linux or Windows, and I'm loading that path into log path. And now my log file will be the full file path. So either clogs drive check log or temp drive check log. And now I need to verify if that log directory exists, because we can't write that log path if the directory doesn't already exist. So if this is the first time the script runs, we need to maybe create that directory depending on if the directory file exists or not. Now, I only want to create the directory if it doesn't exist. So I need to test to see if the directory is actually in place or not, and then take action if needed. So I need an if statement. And what we're going to be doing there is we're going to be testing to see if that path exists. So I'm going to do test path. And the path that I'm going to be testing is going to be the log path. So does clogs exist or does temp exist? And if not, we're going to create it. And I'm going to do an error action stop just in case any issues happen. And that necessitates being inside of a try catch. If you're not familiar with this and haven't watched my errors video, go ahead and check that out now. Now, test path is always going to return a Boolean value. So the results of this are going to be either true or false. So I can wrap that inside of an if statement. So I'll go ahead and do that now. So I'll do if and wrap this whole thing inside of a parentheses block. Now, if it finds the directory, this is going to return true. And so we could do something if true, or if it doesn't find the directory, we would need an else statement in this case. Now, one thing I can do to kind of get around having to have the else statement is I can put something called a not in front of this. So I could do if not this criteria here. Now that may seem a little confusing. Let's walk through that real quick. So again, this test path, this part right here, is going to check the log path and determine if it exists or not. If it doesn't, it returns false. And if it does exist, it will return true. Now, the if statement is very good at evaluating true, false. So if this is true, it's going to go down into this block. So right here, if true. But by adding the not statement, what we're saying here in a kind of an English way to say this is, if this in this secondary parentheses block is not true, then fall into the if statement. So if our output directory does not exist, so our output directory is not found in this case, we're going to go ahead and create the directory. And we're going to do that with new item. So we're going to use new item, and the item type is going to be directory. And again, this is all IntelliSense. I'm not typing a lot of this out. It auto completes a lot of this stuff for you and tells you what you have to work with. I'm going to do path and log path. So I'm going to create a new item. The item type is going to be directory, and it's going to be to the location that we previously specified here. And if we have any problems with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop. And I'm going to pipe that to out null. I'm doing that because when you create a new directory, it will spit out some stuff to the console, and we don't need that. So I'm going ahead and piping that out to out null. So if you're running a script like tied to a task scheduler or tied to a cron job, you don't need stuff spitting out to the console. New item always spits out something to the console, and by piping it to out null, we just bypass that. And if our directory didn't exist, our file most likely does not exist either. I'm going to go ahead and new item that. And this is not going to be a directory. This is going to be an actual file. And the path is going to be the log file path, not the log path. Because remember, the log file variable contains the log path in addition to the name of the file itself. We're also going to put an error action stop on this and pipe that to out null because we don't need it to output anything to the console. Okay, so I'm going to try determining if the path exists. And I have a not here, which means that if this is not true, then I'm going to go ahead and take some action. Again, if we removed that not, it would be if true, do this. But that wouldn't make sense in our case. We don't want to create these directories if this is true, which is why we have that not statement there. So if not, testing that path, go ahead and create the directory and create the log file. And if we have any problems with that, we're going to throw, because our script is not going to be able to do the things it needs to do if it can't even create a directory and create that simple log file. We're not even going to try to do anything else. We're just going to throw. Okay, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add content to that log file. So I'm going to do add content to that path. And we're going to go to the log file and we're going to tell it what to put in there using the value parameter. And so what I like to recommend here is go ahead and do like a precursor to your logging. So this is going to be an information log, not an error log. And we'll do running PS command path. This is just kind of a startup comment in your log to tell your log file that, hey, this script was run from this location. And it will log that information to your log file. Again, if we can't even create the log file, we're just going to give up. The script is, there's no point really moving forward if we can't even do something simple like that. Okay, next up is we have to determine if PowerShell is installed because we took that dependency on it. And so we need to determine by using get module. And we'll put in here PowerShell. So we'll do name. PowerShell, and we'll do list available. So when I run this, I'm going to click F8 now, which is just going to run this line by clicking F8. This will return some information about the module if it's installed. So we can evaluate to see if we get that back. So we can say if, and again, this is that true statement. So if you get something back, that means that PowerShell is installed. But again, I'm only concerned if it's not installed. So I'm going to, again, add that not and put this in a separate set of parentheses. If it's not installed, I want to take some action. And the action I want to take is I want to log that and let you know inside the log file that, hey, PowerShell is not installed. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put error, and I'm going to change this comment to PowerShell is not installed. If that's the case, we're going to go ahead and throw, because we took that dependency. If it's not installed, we can't really do the things that this script was designed to do. So we're going to give up. But we'll log it so that you can go and look at the error log and see that that is the reason that the script gave up. Now, if it is installed, we're going to go ahead and log that too. So I'm copying that, pasting it in here. That's not an error. That's just going to be informational. And I'm going to put PowerShell is installed. So notice I'm not trying to type everything by hand. I speed myself up by copying some of the existing content that I've already written and add it in real quick by editing it. Okay, briefly recapping, we've got our log file information, Windows versus Linux. We've created the directory. We've logged that the script is initiated and running. And we've checked to see if Postgram is installed. Now it's time to get that hard drive information. The commandlets that we would use in Windows to get drive information are not going to be usable on Linux. So in Windows, I would typically use get volume. And we could do things like see what type of volume information is on the device. We have a C drive, a D drive. We can see like what size is remaining, so on and so forth. But in a Linux device, we don't have that commandlet. So if we come over here and log in, you'll notice that the get volume command is not available inside Linux. But we do have a get ps drive command. And the get ps drive command does give us some of that similar information about the root file system. So I'm going to have to do different things depending if this is Linux versus Windows. We're going to need an if statement again. But I already wrote it. So I'm just going to come up here to the log directory and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to bring that back down to the get hard drive information, and I'm just going to delete the log path entries here. So now I have some logic room in here for doing things on Linux, and here is going to be Windows. Okay, let's pop over to our Linux device and see what we're going to need to do in order to properly calculate if the drive is low or not. So I'm going to load this into a D temporary variable and do get ps drive. And then I just want the PS drive where the name is equal to the root. And so now what I have here is just the root file system. And I see that I have a use to work with and a free to work with. Let's see if I have anything else to work with. I'll do D and pipe that to format list and star. And so I've got that used in bytes and I've got that free in bytes as well. And so in order to calculate the percentage of the drive that is left over, I'm going to need to add the free and the used together and then do some math to calculate the percentage left. So our parameter here is used and free. So I'm just going to make a quick comment of that. Used, and then there was also free. So I'm just jotting that down to remind myself that those were the parameters. And so now I'm going to start coding. So I'm going to declare a variable called volume, and I'm going to do get ps drive for Linux. And I'm going to tab complete that, and I'm going to use name, and then the name is going to be drive. Now we haven't declared drive yet. We remember one of our bullet points is to support the user being able to specify what the drive is. We're going to circle back on that in just a minute. But when I do allow the user to specify the drive, I'm going to put that into the drive variable. And so just trust me, we'll get back to that. But for right now, we're just going to put that in there and we're going to circle back and add that logic. So we're going to check the drive that the user specifies. And I need to see if that actually exists. Because sometimes the user might give us a drive letter that doesn't actually exist on the system. So I'm going to verify the volume actually exists. So if volume. So if nothing is returned from this, we're not going to have anything, and this if is going to fail. But if it does return information, the drive does exist, and then we're going to proceed. So if the volume is good, otherwise, what do I want to do? I want to log that and tell the user that, hey, you gave us a drive that doesn't actually exist. So if that volume does not return any information, then drive was not found. And we'll just have to give up because there's nothing we can do. We can't send a Telegram message. We can't check anything because the drive that the user provided is make-believe. Okay, but if it does exist, I need to get the total because that ps drive commandlet does not give us the total. So the total is going to be the volume dot used and plus the volume dot free. Okay, so that's going to give us the total space that's on the drive. And let's go verify that that is the case. So using this logic here, I'm going to do volume. And notice I'm not copying, but I'm just doing the same syntax on both sides to check my work, so to speak. We're going to do get ps drive, where the name is going to be slash for the root drive. So there it gives us volume in our information. And now the total is going to equal volume.used plus volume.free. And then I'm going to pound out total and make sure that that represents the total size, and it does. So the logic is sound here. This is exactly what I was expecting. Okay, so now I'm going to declare a %free, and we're going to have to do some math. Math isn't always the most fun thing, but sometimes in programming, it is necessary. So I'm going to do a %free, and I'm going to declare an integer variable. And now we're going to have to do some math. And order of operations is a thing here, so we're going to have to declare a couple of parentheses and get to work on how we're going to operate in this math problem. So in order to do this, we know that the volume free is going to need to be divided by the total. And that's going to give us a percentage of the free space. But that by itself is not going to be sufficient. We're going to have to multiply that by 100. And let's see if that logic is going to work out. So %free equals int volume.free divided by total times 100 close parentheses. Check %free, 78% free. Great. Logic checks out. Let's go ahead and log that to the user and let them know what we found. So I'm going to add content to our log path info, and we're going to say the %free is the %free variable. And we'll add a percentage sign at the end just for cosmetic. Okay, so I got my drive information off Linux. I've got the total space. I've calculated the %free. I've logged that. If we can't find the drive, I'm going to go ahead and error that in the log, but then we have to give up. So I'm going to go ahead and throw. Okay, otherwise we're doing Windows, and that's going to be a little bit different logic. We're still going to use the volume variable, and this time I'm going to do get volume. And I'm going to do an error action stop on that. And I'm going to do a where object. And I immediately open and close curly braces. Our drive letter equals drive. Okay, logic here is we're getting the volume. I demonstrated that a moment ago. But I only want to pull out by piping to where object where the drive letter, which comes from right here, drive letter, equals the drive that the user specifies. In this case, if they specified C, it would pull the C drive information, and otherwise it would load volume with the D drive information. I still have to check to make sure that that is in place. So I'm going to use the same logic I did up here. So I'm going to copy this if volume else. So if volume, I'm just going to, the else should stay the same, I think. Else, say we couldn't find the drive. Yep, that looks good to me. And we're going to give up and throw. Otherwise, we're going to do some math. Now, one of the interesting things here is that the get volume commandlet actually gives you the total size as a pre-calculated field. So really, total, I don't need to add anything together. I can just do total equals volume dot size because that's already calculated for us. And our %free is going to remain exactly the same. I don't have to do anything different there. Oh, well, that's actually not true because this volume.free does not actually exist. Observe what I mean. So if I do volume right now equals get volume, and if we copy this real quick, where objects, where objects open close drive letter equals, let's say D. So this should be loaded unexpected D in expression statement. I probably wants that inside quotes. Yep. So if we do volume pound out now, and let me pull this up so you guys can see a little bit better. If we do volume pound out now, that's just the D drive. And one of the logic mistakes I was just about to make was in Windows, if I had kept the volume.size, that would not... No, volume.size is fine because that's total. It's volume.free. That was part of the PS drive command only. So notice if I do volume.free down here, that is not a parameter. So the one we have to work with is size remaining. So, and in this case, since this is a CD-ROM, the size remaining is 0. So we need to change this free to size remaining. So our %free is going to be the volume size remaining in Windows divided by that total times 100. Let's check our math. I'm going to go ahead and load the drive variable that we have specified here temporarily with D. Now that I have that, I can run this line right here using F8 in my console down here. So I'm going to check volume now. That's loaded with the D drive. And I'm going to do total, F8. Total is now the correct size. And I'm going to do %free calculation, checking my work. %free is 0% because there is no on this size remaining on this drive. I could change that around by changing the drive letter to C. And let's check our work again. Load up volume information for that. Check volume. We could do our total. Total, not tokens, total. And if we do %free on our C drive, it's 64% free. Great. Getting rid of that with Control tilde. We now have the logic for getting the hard drive information regardless of Linux or Windows, and we've correctly loaded that into our %free variable. One thing I'm not feeling super great about is this is not inside of a try catch, so maybe we would encounter an error getting the drive information for some reason. And so I'm going to wrap this whole thing inside of a try catch. So I went ahead and typed in try and clicked tab. That auto completed it for me. I'm going to copy all of this logic right here and paste that into the try. I'm going to move this comment up to the top. And if we encounter any errors, for example, getting the PS drive or getting the volume information, so I add an error action stop here. We're going to go ahead and log that. And I'm going to say unable to retrieve volume information. And I'm also going to actually log the error itself. So I'm going to do $_, which is going to represent the current object in the error pipeline. So we'll actually log the error itself to the log that we have set up. And because of that, I'm going to go ahead and throw because we're going to have to give up. Okay, we're logging. We're verifying the log exists. We verified our dependency of Postgram is there. We've got all our logic set up for evaluating the drive. It's time to send a Telegram message if required. And because of that if required, we're going to need an if statement. So if what? Well, we're going to have to make a determination about if that %free, so I'm typing in PER and clicking tab, which gives us that %free variable, auto completion, is what? Well, I'm going to put less than or equal to 20. And so if it's less than or equal to 20%, I want a Telegram notification telling me, hey, the drive is low. Okay, in order to send this message, I'm going to need to be able to import the PoshGram module. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a try catch just automatically. And I'm going to do an import module. Name. PoshGram. And if any errors are encountered doing that, I'm just going to stop. Now, if it succeeds, I want to log that and let the user know that, hey, we had a perfectly fine time importing that module. So I'm copying that and writing imported PoshGram successfully. Okay, if we can't import PoshGram, what I'm going to do is I'm going to log an error. And so I'm going to say PoshGram could not be imported, and why. And again, I'm just going to come up here, add that content path to log file, and put out the current object in the error pipeline. So we log the specific file of why we could not import the PoshGram module. Okay, so the next action we're going to take is we're going to start sending a Telegram message. So I'm going to log that inside of the log for our user. And what I'm going to say here is sending Telegram notification. And this is the criteria we need to do that. I'm going to Control X this, bring it up here. And so I need a bot token and a chat ID. Now, it's a little out of scope for this lesson on what that entails. I'll include a link where you can get set up creating your own bot for Telegram. But for now, I'm just going to add that information in. Okay, so this looks pretty straightforward, but I think I can clean this up and make this look a little bit better. So while this would work just fine, I'm just going to make some cosmetic changes using splatting. If you've never used splatting before, I'll walk you through it right now. So one of the neat things is I do have a module installed on my machine where I can actually convert a command to a splat expression. So if I click this, this will adjust this line here from using parameters like this to actual splat. So notice that converted this to splat format. So what does that mean? Well, notice here that we still declare a variable, send telegram text message splat, and inside of here we have a hash table. And these contain the names of our parameters. This would work just the same way here. I could declare a message parameter and put hi, as our message parameter. But instead, I'm declaring that message here inside of this splat. And I think I can do a little bit better than your drive is low. So what I'm going to include in here is something along the lines of how low it actually is. So we'll put a designator of low space. And we'll put drive at %free. And we'll add a percentage sign for cosmetics. Our chat ID parameter is going to be the chat that we put here. But I can clean that up and just declare that right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move that logic down right here and just load it right into that parameter. Same with the bot token. We'll go ahead and remove these variables. We don't need them. So our message is low space drive at %free. Our chat ID is going to be this. Our bot token is this. And we're going to go ahead and send the Telegram text message using this special designation of @ and declaring the name of the variable that we previously established. So this is just a clean way of adding a bunch of parameters without going one at a time. Message, chat ID, bot token. You can declare all of those in this hash table up here, and then just reference the entire splat in one go. So just a cosmetic way of kind of cleaning up your code. Looks nice and is a lot easier to read. Okay, last thing is to make sure that this is also in a try catch. So I'm going to add a parameter of error action stop here. And what I'm going to do now is try to send that Telegram message. If it works, I want to go ahead and copy this and log that and say, hey, message sent successfully. Otherwise, we're going to log that it didn't. I'm going to go ahead and here copy a previous one that I wrote. I'm going to say error encountered sending message. And I'm going to log the error as well, and we're going to throw. Okay. We just wrote a script. Now we need to test it and run it. Oh, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. We forgot to give the user the ability to specify which drive we were going to be scanning. What I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to remove some of this initial statement up here. And let's just check real quick. We support logging. We check the drive. We haven't done this yet. Let the user specify the drive. We support both Windows and Linux, and we can send a Telegram notification. I'm going to go ahead and remove all this. And there's a very special syntax for allowing users to do things kind of dynamically, and that is the parameter. So I'm going to type in param. And if I click tab, it goes ahead and populates a couple of different pieces for me. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this and show you that again. I'm going to type in param. I'm going to click tab, and this is going to give me the information that I need. I'm going to go ahead and remove the command binding, and I'll be covering that in a later video. So stay tuned, click that subscribe button. We'll be covering that in detail. And I'm just going to leave the parameter name block. And so in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some criteria for the parameter. I'm going to name it real quick. We named it drive. So this is what's going to be referenced down here for which drive is going to be evaluated for the size. So the parameter criteria that I'm going to put is, this is mandatory. And the mandatory is true. So our user has to provide us the drive. If they don't, we're not sure what to scan, and this script is going to fail. So this is a mandatory parameter. And what that means is when this script is running, if the user doesn't specify a parameter, it will ask them. And it will not run until it gets that drive information. And then this bracket here that was pre-populated for us is the type of variable that we're going to be working with. And this is going to be a string value. So I'm going to type in string there. So let's read this real quick. A parameter has been declared. The parameter is going to be syntaxed in this manner. So if we had another one, notice that we would put a comma here, and the same format would continue to work. So the criteria of the parameter, the type of parameter, and the parameter name. We only need one for this script, so I'm going to delete that, and that's going to be our drive. So it is mandatory, it's type string, and the name of it is drive. I'm going to click save. And so now we're going to test it and see if it actually works. In order to do that, I'm going to hop over to my console window, and I'm going to show you how to execute some scripts on your system. Now, the first thing that you need to know is that depending on what your execution policy is set at, you may not be able to run scripts on your system. So you need to run the get execution policy and see what you're currently set at. I cover the different execution policies in great detail on the TechThoughts.info blog. So make sure to check that out to see what the difference is between all signed, remote signed, so on and so forth. You may need to set your execution policy to something else in order to properly run scripts. So you may need to bypass, set to default, or set to something else, depending on what your system is. So if you're finding that you're getting an error running scripts, it is most likely to do with your execution policy. Get execution policy and set execution policy can help you determine if you're having any problems in that regard. My current execution policy is set to remote signed, which means that scripts that I wrote on this system will be able to run. And since I wrote this script on the system, it's going to be able to run just fine. So I'm going to navigate to the desktop. I'm going to do that using my environment variable, user profile, and then desktop. And if I do an ls right here, you'll notice that that drive variable that we've been working on for a while is located there. To execute this script, what I can do is I can do $/, which references the current location, and just type in tab until you get to the script that you're after. I want to run this script, and this is the syntax that I will use to do it. .ps1. And notice, because we put the parameter in there, and we didn't provide it the drive letter right there, that parameter, since it's marked as mandatory true, is kicking back and saying, hey, slow down for a moment. You got to give me the drive letter in order for this script to run. And so I'm going to put the drive letter C. And it doesn't appear that anything happened. Well, we did a lot of logging effort inside of this script that we created. Let's go check the log to see what's inside of it. So I put that into C logs. And notice that it's the same as we put in drivecheck.log. I'm going to open that up, and let's see why nothing happened. Running the script, Postgram is installed, and the %free is 64%. So the script is doing exactly what we expect. And the reason we didn't get a Telegram message is because the %free is not less than 20%. So every time our script runs, it's going to log to the file, but it's not going to really take any action unless it's below 20%, which is exactly the logic that we put in here. So our D drive, as we previously established, is a CD-ROM on this system. And CD-ROMs, by their very nature, don't have any information left that can be written to. So if we go look at this, you'll see 0 bytes free on this CD-ROM drive. So if I give the script the D drive instead, and I'll do that by a parameter. So we can run parameters when we run a script. We can provide that script some parameters. I'm going to get the drive letter D. And if I click enter, we get a Telegram message to our Telegram chat on our phone, on our desktop client, telling us, hey, the drive is low at 0%. How handy is that? So you could add this to a cron job. You could add this to a task scheduler. And anytime your drive starts to get a little bit low, you can get an alert message on Telegram. Let's pop over to our Linux device and make sure that we achieve the ability for it to work there as well. I've gone ahead and copied it over here. So here's our drive.ps1. In the same fashion, I'm going to do drive. I'm going to provide it a drive parameter. And I'm going to give it the drive parameter of /, which is the root volume. I'm going to click enter. That is going to generate a log file. If we go look at it, running the script, Postgram module verified, %free is 78%, so we did not get a Telegram message because it's not below 20%. Congratulations if you followed along. I hope you found this information and walkthrough on how to write your first script extremely beneficial and helpful. Where to go from here? Well, the sky's the limit. Think of something that you do every day at work that you have to do a lot of manual steps. Try to tackle it. Try to write a script for it. If it ends up being too complicated, try to find a simpler task to write. If you want to practice with the script that we wrote today, there are some additional things you could try. Maybe you don't prefer Telegram as your chat client. Maybe you could send this to iMessage instead, or maybe you could send it to an email address. So you could adjust the logic down here to do something a little bit different about where it gets sent to. Here's another thing that you could try on this particular script. This 20% right now is hard-coded, so this will only send a message if it's lower than 20%. But what if the user would like to get a message if it's less than 10%? Well, you could adjust the parameter block up here to make that a dynamic variable. So experiment with that and try to allow the user to specify 5% or 15% as the desired logic that they would like to see for when they get a message. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and click that like button and subscribe for more TechThoughts videos.